Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya, and today we will talk about the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has rejected any scope for third-party mediation between India and Pakistan, saying both nations can discuss and resolve all issues bilaterally. He made these remarks during his meeting with US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of G7 summit in France. President Trump also concurred with Prime Minister Modi, and referring to Kashmir, he said he was confident that both India and Pakistan can resolve their issues. This is being considered as a big diplomatic win for India. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio today. Let me start by introducing these guests to you. Mr. Rana Banerjee, former Special Secretary of Cabinet Secretariat. We also have with us Professor Harsh V. Pant, Distinguished Fellow and Head of ORF's Strategic Studies. And former Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar is also here with us. Ambassador Sajanhar, let me begin with you to try and understand the context of these remarks, specifically coming in from President Trump. If you look at the previous remarks made by him, it seems like that he's made a course correction, and Prime Minister Modi has emphatically made his point out there, something which has been India's consistent stand so far, that all issues between India and Pakistan are bilateral only.
You're very right, Vishalji, because, in the run-up to this meeting, I think there was a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation, but several anxieties and concerns also. And I'll mention the anxieties and concerns first, what you mentioned about relations between India and Pakistan and on the issue of Kashmir. Because we know that on the 22nd of July, when President Trump met Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, then what he had said that, he'd been contacted, Prime Minister Modi had suggested to him in Osaka on the sidelines of the G20 summit that he might wish to mediate on the issue of Kashmir. And that, of course, had come as a big surprise, a shock, I would say, as far as all of us in India were concerned. In the Parliament, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar had to say categorically, both houses of Parliament, that Prime Minister Modi had made no such suggestion. Then this thing came up again also more recently on the 21st of August when he said that, the situation in Kashmir is explosive and it is a Hindu-Muslim issue, and then he would like to mediate or do whatever it is to help. So notwithstanding the fact that India had completely denied that there was any possibility or scope for a third-party mediation, saying that it's a bilateral issue. Also, immediately after that, the State Department, on each occasion that Mr. Trump mentioned mediation, the State Department came up and said that, it's a bilateral dispute between India and Pakistan and they should resolve it. So, there was this sort of a thing. And then he had mentioned that on the sidelines of G7 in Biarritz, he's going to discuss Kashmir with Prime Minister Modi. So there was both anticipation and also concern. And I think the outcome of the meeting today was very positive, as you said, a diplomatic win for India. Because even after, one for the domestic constituency, even after the External Affairs Minister had stated that Prime Minister Modi had made no such move, the opposition had still demanded that Prime Minister should come and explain himself in person. So, there in front of cameras, etc., he was able to tell President Trump, and President Trump agreed that both India and Pakistan could sort of, work on it well. So, in that sense, it was one point that it was very well put across.
Okay.
The other, very quickly, what I could say, the other issue on which there was considerable anxiety was on the trade issue, because trade is also something that had been mentioned. President Trump has been calling India a tariff king and saying, our tariffs are very, very high. It had imposed penal duties on Indian steel exports to the United States, aluminium, and also withdrawn GSP.
Yeah.
So it was expected that this is also going to be a little bit of a fiery issue. There would be discussion and it could make India uncomfortable. But as far as the reports emanating so far and available with us, it appears that
nothing of that sort has happened.
Nothing of that sort. It's been left basically to the visit of Commerce Industry Minister Mr. Piyush Goyal to the United States and his discussions with the US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, which should take place before the meeting, the next meeting of the two leaders, which will be on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting in September in New York.
Okay, so clearly out there on the other, previous aspect, let me bring in Professor Pant here. Professor Pant, one thing which is seemingly clearly established here is that India, once again, through Prime Minister Modi, has emphatically reiterated its stand vis-a-vis Kashmir and vis-a-vis any other issues which are there between India and Pakistan, and has thwarted Pakistan attempts to internationalize that issue.
See, what Pakistan has been doing ever since India revoked Article 370 is in a desperate attempt to figure out a response, they have been trying to internationalize it. And we know, it's not simply what Mr. Trump said, but also, the rebuke, the seeming rebuke that Pakistan has got from its traditional allies in the Middle East, where Prime Minister went during this trip as well, Bahrain and UAE, which emphatically came out in support of India. So clearly there is a global isolation that Pakistan is facing, and if you see Mr. Imran Khan's comments, even today he has addressed the nation, very sort of remarks about nuclear catastrophe, etc., etc., the scaremongering that it is so used to doing in such circumstances comes out. And I think it's part of the desperation that they are not getting any traction on the fundamental policy response to this question of what to do with what India has done in Kashmir. And I think what Mr. Modi's approach to this has been very sensible. For example, if you see the August 15th speech, there is no mention of Pakistan. So clearly, it's largely about bigger issues. It's largely about how India looks forward to transforming India itself. And with Mr. Trump as well, he's saying, well, we have multiple issues on which we can talk about, from illiteracy to diseases, and all of them need to be tackled bilaterally. There is no role for any third-party mediation.
Exactly. In fact, these are the remarks which Prime Minister made, if I remember correctly, in a public rally in Goa a few years back, where he clearly pointed out, asking Pakistan's leadership to go ahead and have a discussion on these issues.
And I think that takes his policy, that makes his policy much more coherent to our global negotiators.
And consistent as well.
Absolutely. And so when Mr. Modi says today that, look, it is imperative for India and Pakistan to fight these challenges, he's not simply making it up because there is a crisis. That has been a consistent position he has held over the last few years, that he has also talked to Mr. Imran Khan about. So now that Kashmir may be happening, but Kashmir, India doesn't want to talk about it because there is nothing that India has done which is beyond the scope of its constitutional provisions. So I think there is a sentiment here which he is tapping into. There is a framework that he is tapping into, and this is a message not simply this was a message not simply for Mr. Trump, but also because this was his first global outreach after the decision on Kashmir was taken, that this is a message to all our global friends and adversaries that, look, this is a matter that ultimately India and Pakistan will have to decide. There is no role for anyone else. And it was beautifully put it, the way he put it out was also very, very effective, strong. And I think the message would not have been clearer to our interlocutors, especially Mr. Trump, who, as you're discussing, has taken a very divergent views at divergent points in time on this issue. So perhaps he has a better understanding now of this issue.
Okay, so we can safely consider and call it a course correction from President Donald Trump. Mr. Banerjee, your views on this situation here and the way India has made its point on the international stage?
Well, I would eschew undue euphoria in this regard. Firstly, because Mr. Trump remains unpredictable. Secondly, the crux of the situation, how we handle the unfolding of the civilian strife in Kashmir, that would be very crucial. If we can handle the relaxation of the stringent law and order measures that are now in force peacefully and keep the demonstrations which are bound to ensue at a certain peaceful level, then perhaps the international community would not be unduly bothered. But if there is violence and if there is a perception of the security forces having overreacted or created problems in repression, then the international community's stance could change. So we should eschew our euphoria about the seeming diplomatic victory.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Sajjan Nahar here again. As Mr. Banerjee is pointing out, if you look at the response coming in from the international community so far, clearly, goes ahead and supports India's stand and does not, give Pakistan a chance to be successful in its efforts to internationalize the issue. But Mr. Trump's anxiety over India-Pakistan relation, the way Professor Pant was also pointing out, several inconsistent statements coming in. So how do you see things moving here from here onwards?
Vishal, I think you're right. Mr. Trump has been rather hyperactive, particularly, if we take the whole evolution of events since the 22nd of July when he met Imran Khan. If you look at it before that, from the time early January 2017 till, let's say, December of 2018, there has been a consistent policy of applying pressure on Pakistan to desist from support of terrorism, providing safe havens to terrorists, funding, training, etc., etc. Both as far as Afghanistan is concerned and also India is concerned. You recall the South Asia strategy of August 2017, his tweet of 1st January 2018, national security strategy of January 2018. So all these things have basically been on pressure on Pakistan. But more recently, as the second electoral cycle, that comes into position, and Mr. Trump is keen that he should withdraw from Afghanistan. And in that context, he needs the support, he needs the help of Pakistan to bring the Taliban to the negotiating table. So he's been sort of, trying to dangle a few carrots in front of Pakistan, in front of Imran Khan. And in that sense, I think he was trying to be sort of generous to Imran Khan when the discussions were taking place. So this is, in my view, a false narrative that Pakistan has tried to spin in the past also, that unless Kashmir is resolved, we'll not be able to give our full attention and focus to the western border, that is to the border with Afghanistan, and in that sense help America to withdraw from there. And that is why, the Pakistan ambassador to the United States has also made remarks to this effect. But then we've also seen that whether it is the Kabul government, Ashraf Ghani's government, or the Taliban leadership, both of them have said that Pakistan should not try to confuse the Kashmir and the Afghan issues. So I think this sort of a false narrative also has to be taken away from as far as Mr. Trump is concerned.
Okay.
So this is something why Mr. Trump has been changing his position. But as he mentioned in his conversation with Prime Minister Modi, that he had a discussion with him last evening over dinner. He's understood what the issues are, and he feels reasonably confident and satisfied that Mr. Modi says everything is under control. And to that extent, I fully endorse what Mr. Banerjee has said, that the real test going forward will lie in how well we are, how effectively we are able to manage the situation as it evolves particularly in the Kashmir Valley. I think Jammu and Ladakh are quite all right, but in the 4 or 5 districts of South Kashmir.
Okay. Professor Pant, do you agree on these stipulations, as Mr. Banerjee and Ambassador Sajjan is pointing out, vis-a-vis, U.S. policy, specifically if you look at President Trump's remarks and outbursts on this issue?
See, yes, I mean, I think there is no doubt that going forward, how India manages its own geography, especially in the Kashmir Valley, would be of immense importance to how we engage with the outside world. But we should also remember that we have been through phases where the valley has been in very difficult positions, and we have had global pressure on us. So I think if we could withstand that pressure, then I think there is no doubt in my mind that the pressure or the ability of Indian government at this point in time, where India is at a completely different phase in the global interstate hierarchy. India is a government which is very strong. India has leadership that is able to convey its view to the outside world without any ifs and buts. I think that makes India's case that much stronger. Of course, internationalization or not will always depend on what happens on the ground. But I have no doubt that this is something that we have, if we can do that in the past, we will be able to do that in the future as well. But the question, I think, which is of short to medium term importance is what happens in Afghanistan and how crucial Afghanistan becomes. So what Mr. Trump is saying today we have seen that he is very good in changing his own narrative. And he is very good at making you accept as if this was always the case. Whereas we know that he has been wavering all around on this question. So tomorrow, if his difficulties in Afghanistan grow, and we know he has used very strong words that he needs Pakistan to extricate US from Afghanistan. So if that dependence grows, and if he feels that that dependence is so important that he has to do something vis-a-vis India, I'm sure he will make statements, etc., which can be detrimental to the future trajectory of Indo-US relationship.
Okay.
But what is important, I think, is that larger bureaucratic setup. Even when he was making those negative statements, the bureaucratic setup in America was always very cautious and coming out very strongly, clarifying what Mr. Trump was trying to say.
Okay, so, leaving apart what President Trump has said so far and then made a U-turn or, done a course correction, all that. Mr. Banerjee, if you look at, today's meeting and those remarks from Prime Minister Modi in the context of what India's stand vis-a-vis Pakistan has been so far on the international stage, and then carrying home that point from none other than the Prime Minister himself on the international stage, that all issues between India and Pakistan are bilateral and bilateral only. No scope for third-party mediation. That is more significant than what else has been said anywhere.
Well, that has been very firmly put across, and in the presence of the US President. So certainly, India's position has been very clearly pointed out. But beyond that, I would still qualify that it would not really insulate us from international pressure if the situation in Kashmir erupts and in a manner which is unfavorable and violent. So all this may not amount to very much.
But so far so good. At least India has been able to go ahead and score those
certainly,
and then thwart Pakistan in its tracks.
Well, I don't think Pakistan has been thwarted as yet. Pakistan will wait out the situation in Kashmir and definitely will keep trying. And I don't think the last word on this subject has been said yet.
Okay, that's Mr. Sajjan, Pakistan seemingly we've seen in the past as well that it would definitely keep trying. So how do you see this thing vis-a-vis India-Pakistan context?
You see, Pakistan, I agree, will continue to keep trying. And although it is under such severe pressure as far as the Financial Action Task Force is concerned, in terms of providing safe havens to terrorists, supporting, funding terrorists, money laundering, etc., because the final meeting of the FATF is going to take place in October in Paris. And we've seen what the Asia Pacific group has come out, that, out of 40 requirements, it was not able to comply with 32 of them. And separately, 11 out of 11, it was not able to give satisfaction on 10 of them. So, it's been found wanting. But still, I would say that, the manner in which Imran Khan has been behaving and the sort of totally irresponsible statements that he's been making, particularly the one that he's made today, that, there is nuclear conflict could take place. I won't put anything above Imran Khan. So the first thing that we have to be wary about and we have to be careful about is a huge, big terror attack. And, if that sort of a thing happens here and, we respond, then there are so many other voices in the vicinity, not only Pakistan, but more importantly, China, because I think China is also waiting for some false step by India. And even the Chief of Naval Staff today has said that there are reports of terrorists traveling by the ocean route from Pakistan to India. So one is this, we have to be fully concerned and fully prepared for a major, massive terror attack, which, Pakistan could say that is being done by local people who have been sort of, oppressed in such a manner. The other, of course, is the fake news, in terms of all the Twitter and Facebook accounts and just trying to spread misinformation that, things are really going bad. We hear about all of this here even at the moment. So I think the government has to take a very proactive stand to either rebut or to sort of, take action that this is not circulated in such a free manner. So I agree that Pakistan is not going to take it lying down, because Mr. Imran Khan and the army establishment is under huge pressure from the domestic constituency, because they say India has taken such a huge step, such a bold step, such a major step. What are you doing? And just wringing and flailing their hands in the air. Imran Khan has really not been able to do anything, whether it is downgrading of the of the diplomatic relations, or breaking off of the trade relations, or stopping people-to-people contact by passage of trains. They have really not been able to do anything, and their attempt to create an alarmist picture of the India-Pakistan relations
and internationalize the situation.
Internationalized, that has not helped.
That has not been successful.
That has not delivered.
Okay.
He's not been able to do that.
Okay, Professor Pant, from that perspective, as Mr. Sajjanar is also pointing out, Pakistan seems to be in a very difficult situation right now. Their efforts to internationalize the issue are not bearing fruits. Their long-standing allies, as you pointed out earlier, from Middle East also, are not seemingly in tune with them on this particular aspect, and the FATF aspect as well. And as Mr. Sajjanar is pointing out, domestic pressure on the Pakistani leadership is building up. So India can't let its guard down, as Mr. Banerjee was pointing out.
See, absolutely. With a nation like Pakistan as your neighbor, you can never let your guard down. It's the whole identity of Pakistan is based on how it defines itself vis-a-vis India. So clearly, and in particular on Kashmir, Kashmir has been this issue that has been driving their internal cohesion in some ways. So clearly, it's an existential almost crisis for them, and I would not, I would not say that the stakes could not have been higher. I mean, this is a time when perhaps Pakistan is really looking at having to rethink its own assumptions about its own role in the region and beyond. And I think that's why you have to be on guard. But I think what has also happened is that Pakistan's ability to convince the world by crying wolf time and time again has also now reached a point where it cannot go any further. So therefore, the sort of nonchalance that you see from certain quarters of the world is that Pakistan has cried wolf so many times, and the kind of statements it is making about nuclear catastrophe, the kind of statements about a conflict in South Asia, the kind of statements on how this is a Hindu versus Muslim problem,
scaremongering.
So that has run its course to many, because Pakistan has been found wanting on certain quarters. So whether you're looking at FATF, the debacle at the ICJ, which gradually pressure has been piling up, and here is a country that is having to have cabinet meetings to decide what's the price of chapati going to be. So there are clearly the pressures, internal economic pressures are huge. The pressures on regional security are huge. In fact, Afghanistan cuts both ways, because the fact that you are needed for Afghan peace process by Americans means that you cannot really put the forces now on the Indian side of the border. You have to deliver for them. And so I think Pakistan is under the kind of pressure that we have not seen in the recent past, and that means good things, and that can also mean very bad things. That can also mean that they will then react in ways which perhaps will be very, very detrimental to Indo-Pak relations and to the larger South Asian stability.
Okay. Mr. Banerjee, your views on that? Pakistan seemingly is in a very tight spot right now, and we'll have to watch out.
Yes, the pressure for out-of-box solutions in Pakistan is growing. The army is under pressure. Imran Khan is basically parroting what the army sentiment is. So the army has in the past put itself in a pedestal as the defender of the country's sovereignty. If it doesn't do anything, the people and the opposition, they are going to say that what use are you as the army? And another problem is that Imran has put all the opposition mainstream party leadership behind bars on the issue of corruption. So now the opposition is going to combine on the issue of inaction on Kashmir. So that's what's going to happen.
And that is something which
that
makes
is the pressure to which Imran is responding in this type of messaging to his domestic audience.
Okay. Final concluding words from you, Mr. Sajjanar, from the way from here onwards. We know that Pakistan, is in a tight spot, and as all of you are pointing out, that India will have to be on its guard. Will have to watch out and keep on, winning these diplomatic battles one by one.
No, absolutely. I think both diplomatic battles as also battle on the ground. What is happening, as it has been said, winning the hearts and minds of the people. So slowly and gradually, as the restrictions are removed, making sure that, whatever is required, whatever is needed in the region that is done. And simultaneously also, Vishal, I think as far as our own engagement with the United States is concerned, of course with the broader international community, yes, but with the United States particularly, because there have been a few issues that have come up in the recent past. Trade is one of them. Hopefully, we should try to work that out. Maybe also try and see whether a visit by the US President to India in the foreseeable months, in the coming months, that is possible. It will have to take place before coming January, because after January he is going to get fully tied up in whatever is going to happen there. And basically emphasizing to the United States that ours is a global strategic partnership. India and the United States is a global strategic partnership, and we shouldn't we can focus on the pence and dollars as far as trade is concerned, but there are bigger issues of Indo-Pacific, of peace, maritime security, defense cooperation, defense preparedness, and situation in Afghanistan, so that it doesn't revert back, whether it is in terms of women's rights, human rights, democracy, stability, to what it was 18 years before, when the United States came into the picture. So I think the bigger picture, and that a stronger, prosperous, stable India is in the overall interest of the United States and of world security, regional security, and prosperity. I think this is a message we need to give to the United States and strengthen our partnership.
Okay, clearly. So that is something which seemingly today our Prime Minister has been able to convey the bigger message, the larger issues at stake there, and also reiterated India's stand vis-a-vis Pakistan, issues with Pakistan, clearly pointing out that any issue with Pakistan is a bilateral matter and there is no scope for any mediation by a third party. But given the nature and the history of Pakistan and how it acts, as our panelists are also pointing out, India will have to watch out and ensure that no untoward incident happens out there. We'll come back again tomorrow and bring a new topic for you. Till then, keep watching Al Jazeera Television.